first thing that you want to do when you start painting your watercolor piece is tape down your piece of paper to a drawing board or some kind of sturdy, smooth surface. It seems self-explanatory that you would just tape the edges, but people sometimes struggle with this, so I wanted to tell you my tip. What I always do is go ahead and cut your piece of tape, and I go ahead and find the middle of the tape, and you can see through the tape a little bit. So I try to find the middle on one corner so I can, hold it really close, and then I can find the middle. Now what you want to do is just ignore the rest of the tape, ignore the tape over here, and just focus on the corner. So if you start to press it down, just make sure that it's hits right in the middle down here in the corner, and then the rest just kind of falls in line. So then you just press it down. In the end, when you go to tear off your tape, you also want to tear your tape off in a diagonal at 90 degrees. That way it doesn't rip your paper really bad. If you have really sticky tape, I usually recommend laying your tape down on a piece of fabric, or like if you're wearing jeans, go ahead and put your tape all down your jeans so that it's not as sticky when you put it on your paper. For this painting, we're going to do some watercolor cactus plants, and so you're going to start by drawing a few of the plants out. I'm going to draw them as I want to see them on the piece of paper, but if you want to make yours larger or smaller or arrange them a little bit differently, that's up to you. I'm going to start over on the right with some really basic shapes. I've got a pretty sharp pencil, and I'm not going to press down very hard because I don't want to dent the paper. So I'm going to start with this first shape. It's kind of like the top of a hot air balloon. It's okay if yours looks different than mine. Just for reference, here's the middle of my page, and so maybe an inch down is where the top of that shape starts. I also want another similar shape that kind of starts behind. I'm no cactus expert, so I have no idea what these are called. There's one, and then I want to do one more. Let's say this is a little bit skinnier. And it kind of comes out in a diagonal. You know what, I think those are too similar. I'm gonna make this shorter. So it should be really easy to erase because you're not pressing down very hard. Okay, then I know later I want some little flowery shapes on top, but I won't worry about that yet. Okay, I also want something similar to a snake plant, or I think they're called like a mother-in-law's tongue. So I'm gonna just start with these. They're like grass shapes. They all are a little bit different. So I want them to overlap. Some of them to be larger and some to be behind the other pieces. Again, I'm really drawing lightly because I don't want to dent the paper, but also because you really don't want to see your pencil underneath your drawing. Once you watercolor over pencil, it kind of seals it down. Sometimes you can erase the pencil, but not always. So usually, even after I draw really lightly, I'll go back and erase some of the lines because it makes me a little nervous. Okay, I think I'm okay with that. Over on the left, I want to draw some of the more recognizable, like basic cactus shapes. So I start with a line. Mine, for reference, it's about 3 fingers tall. Before I start to make these little arms. If you're somebody that struggles with holding the brush really tight and drawing really dark, I encourage you to hold really far back on your pencil. I said brush, I mean pencil. Hold really far back on your pencil. That way you don't choke your pencil, that's what it's called. I'm gonna make this one go up really tall. So they go straight up. The little arm just kind of goes straight up to the side. You can either add another one over here, maybe it starts out a little bit higher and just goes straight up. So I'm just gonna pretend that there are some others over here that are smaller, maybe younger plants. That's a little line down the middle. You can look at different cactus plants if you want and just draw what you see, or you can just kind of follow along with me, and mine's just kind of made up as I go. Because really this is just an exercise to get better at watercolor painting. So I really want to fill up the composition. Remember, composition means how you arrange the elements on your page. And so when I look at my piece, I want to make sure that it's interesting all the way across, up and down, everywhere. So I'm going to keep adding some different shapes and different cactus plants in until I feel like it's pretty full and I enjoy looking at the piece before I start to paint. If you're unsure which areas might be too dark, I would just squint your eyes and kind of see what areas pop up. What areas are too dark? What areas do you think that might show through just too much under your watercolor? Again, if you paint over the pencil, it'll kind of seal it down. If you paint inside of your pencil, you can still probably erase it. As long as you can kind of see the lines, then you're okay. Okay, I'm ready to paint. I've got my watercolor ready, and I just chose the palette that had 8 colors so that we can just learn to mix colors. So I want mine to be kind of a teal, like bluish green. So I'm going to put water on my brush, and I'm going to start with my green. This is called loading up your brush, and then you will drop it in one of these little compartments up here at the top. That's why it's really important to make sure you have a clean watercolor palette. So there's my green. Now, before I go in for the blue, I've got to wash my brush really well, make sure there's plenty of water on it. And I'm going to get a little less blue, add it to my color here. So if you need to put more on your mixture, clean your brush, add more. Don't put a dirty brush on one of your brand new clean palettes, one of your brand new clean colors, because it will ruin it potentially. So if I wanted this to be a lot more thin or a lot more transparent, I would keep adding water. Right now I'm okay with how it looks. You can also kind of test it on your napkin. So if you just kind of do this, you can see how strong your color is. I actually want a little bit more. It looks more transparent than I want it to be. Okay, so now I've got my greenish blue. It's like my mermaid fin color. Okay, I want to start with, I might just start with these. So I'm going to start on the left here. And this brush is kind of a medium brush, but you can see it really comes to a point. So you can make a really thin line. I'm going to assume that my cactus has like a ridge down the middle. So I'm going to just trace down, straight down, because I want this side to be a little bit lighter green. And I'm going to do that to all of his little arms. And my lights just turned off. Okay, I'll keep adding my color. So I'm using this blue-green on the left side of all these. Okay, now I want the shadow to be over on the right side, and I want that one to be a little bit more blue, or bluish purple even. You just know you want it darker. So if I add color right now, this one is still wet, and so when I add color over here, it's all gonna bleed together. So that might be a choice that you make on purpose. Maybe you love how that looks, maybe you don't. So that's kind of how it looks. As of right now I think I want to wait and let it dry some more so that I can have a little more differentiation between the two colors. So I already have this kind of bluish color on my brush and I want to use it somewhere else. I know that I want these to be a little bit darker, closer to where the dirt would be. So I'm gonna add that to the bottom. If you have too much paint on your brush or you think it's just not going on there smooth, you can clean your brush and dry it off, and you can see, let me show you. If I dry my brush off, you can use your brush as a sponge. So let me see if I can get closer. So my brush is pretty dry, and if I just touch it to the watercolor, it sucks it back up. So if you want to remove some color, you can do that. Get your dry brush, use it to remove your color. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay. I want to also make a lime green color. So to make lime green, I need a bright green and a yellow. Clean your brush really well. I'm actually going to start with yellow because yellow is not as strong as the green, so I'll need some more of it. Drop your yellow down. Clean your brush and get some of your green. And then you've got a nice like limey color. Okay, go ahead and add your lime green color wherever you think it's gonna look nice. I want these to be a limey green. So I'm not going over this. If you look, I've got these leaves down there at the bottom, and I don't want to go over those leaves because I want them to be something else. And if I want it to be lighter, I should really avoid the leaves because it's gonna be hard to cover them up. So I'm gonna go around them. Okay, I'm outlining this, and then you can hold your brush kind of flat and kind of drag it down, and you'll get some texture. I actually like the way that it looks with those white speckles, so I'm gonna leave that there, and I can fill it in later, but for right now, I like how that looks. I am now going to make kind of a purpley color. So to make purple, I need blue and red. Clean your brush, add your red. If it looks too plummy, add more red, but clean your brush every time in between. Okay, I like that purple. So I want to use that down here at the bottom. I want to do something different this time though, so I'm going to clean my brush again with just water. I want to paint with just water. And remember, this is called wet on wet. It's that technique where you paint your paper with water first. So I'm just going to do one little petal at a time. So I've got that painted, and then I'm going to go in with my purple, and then you'll add your purple to the water. So it just kind of travels along the water, and you don't always know what it's going to do, but you can kind of tap the color on and just kind of see how it mixes. It will usually just travel to the outside of your little water puddle that you've painted. That's why I like to do it individually. I didn't want to paint them all at the same time because then I would lose my shapes. So you want to let this area dry, and I can't paint anything beside it because this color will bleed onto the other. So I have to let this dry. The next color I made is kind of a foresty green. You can kind of see it when I smear it. So I used blue and green again, just like I did up here, but I also added a little bit of brown this time. So you can get so many different colors with the 8 colors that you have in one of the basic palettes. So with this emerald foresty green. I want to start with these, and so for these I want them to look like they have white kind of stripes on them, but to make white in watercolor you just leave it blank. So white in watercolor is typically just the paper. Some palettes do have white and they'll give you kind of a pastel-y color, but they certainly don't cover anything up. Okay, I'm kind of painting along one side and then giving it these little stripes. You can take whatever approach you want, but this is what I'm feeling right now. I like to also change the shade a tiny bit as I go. So if you want to change it and add, like I just dipped my brush in green and then just kind of touch the page, it will add different shades. It's kind of like this technique over here, the wet on wet. So you can just add a little touch and it'll add different shades to whatever you painted already. On the left, my paint has dried, so I can go ahead and put shadows in on the other side. So I like the color that's on my brush right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and just keep using it. I'm considering adding some purple, but at this point, it's just kind of whatever you like. I'm skipping some of the space in between because I want that to look like a middle, like a ridge. So I'm trying to kind of shake my brush and drag it towards the bottom. Notice I'm not holding my brush straight up and down. I'm holding it down towards the paper and I'm just dragging it towards me. That will give you a smoother line. This line was too shaky, so I'm going back and smoothing it out some. Also, I see a big puddle of paint here, so if you have something similar to that, you can get your napkin or paper towel and use that as a sponge and soak up the paint. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint over here again with just water. I'm gonna use some different colors. The only area that I feel like is kind of lacking is going to be this area because I can't really see the difference in these two shapes. I need some more colors over here and I want to put some of the little spikies, but I have to wait for it to dry. I decided to go with a reddish purpley color to make some shadows on this shape. Remember, shadows don't always have to be black or brown. They're more interesting if they're not. to make these little leaves. Got water in my brush, pressing down on the leaf and then barely touching as I drag it down towards the stem. So my color is bleeding over there onto the green, but I actually kind of like that, so I'm gonna leave it. I always tell my students it's okay if you can see that a human painted your piece. That's what makes it good. So before I move on, I'm gonna have to let it dry so that I can add some of those little spikies without it bleeding and making the colors kind of smear together. So I'll wait for it to dry and then we'll finish it up. I mixed up a deep purpley green color. I made sure that there's not too much water on it. And now I'm gonna go in and add some more details. So I've kind of lost this shape, so I wanna add some little points back to it. I've waited for everything to dry so that it shouldn't sink in. So this is wet on dry. That's what the technique would be called. I really wanted to separate these two shapes, and you can do that now that they're dry. Now, I don't want everything to look outlined, because outlines don't look realistic. So I want to smear a little bit of it back in, and I don't want to lose all the painterly qualities, so I'm just kind of working those back in. Don't forget, when you're taking off your tape, pull it off at a 90-degree angle. Sometimes you rip a little bit of paper. It's not that big a deal, but this is the best part. And that's it. If you don't like your pencil marks, then make sure you erase that when it's completely dry. And otherwise, happy painting.